In the winter of 1959, 9 hikers from the Ural Polytechnic Institute embarked on a skiing expedition deep into the Ural Mountains of the Soviet Union. The team, led by Igor Dyatlov, 23, was made up of seasoned mountaineers who were all prepared to face harsh circumstances. Their journey was intended to test their stamina and expertise as they made their way to Otorten Mountain. However, what ought to have been a routine voyage became one of the 20th century's biggest mysteries. Everything appeared to be proceeding as planned when the crew started their excursion in late January. Along the trip, they had taken pictures and kept journals, meticulously documenting their experience. They persevered in spite of the severe weather since spirits were high. Eerie, who became unwell and had to go back home, was the only one to turn around. This ailment, he would later declare, saved his life. The hikers' families became worried when they did not send the planned telegram confirming their safe return. Initially, officials thought that inclement weather had caused the delay. However, a search team was dispatched after many days without any word. Rescuers discovered the group's deserted encampment on the slopes of Kolatsiakal, which means dead mountain in the native Mansi language, on February 26. What they witnessed was inexplicable. As though they had carved their way out in a last-ditch effort to get away, the hikers' tent was still intact, but had been torn open from the inside. Everything they owned, including food, clothing, and boots, remained inside undisturbed. The tracks flowing out from the tent indicated that many of them had left barefoot or with only socks on, even though the temperature had dropped to as low as -30 degrees Celsius. The first 2 remains were discovered by investigators along the trail that descended toward the tree line. Under a big cedar tree, Doroshenko and Georgy Krivonashenko were found next to the remnants of a small fire. They were only wearing their underwear, and their bodies were badly frostbitten. The tree's bark had been removed, as though one of them had attempted to scale it, maybe to watch something get away from something. The bodies of Rustem Slobodin, Zenaida Kolmogorova, and Igor Dyatlov were discovered in various places not far from them, as though they had been trying to crawl back toward the tent. Despite having no visible wounds that would indicate an attack, Slobodin's head displayed evidence of a severe impact. Hypothermia was declared as the official cause of death for each of the 5. Only months later were the other 4 hikers found, buried in a neighboring gully beneath several feet of snow. Something even more unsettling was exposed by their bodies. Lyudmila Dubinina suffered severe internal injuries, such as a crushed chest and several shattered ribs. She was missing her tongue, which made it even stranger. Another seasoned mountaineer, Semyon Zolotaryov, sustained identical wounds, with multiple ribs broken as though he had been hit by a tremendous force. Although the skull of another hiker was cracked, none of their bodies displayed any outward wounds, which were said to be similar to those sustained in an automobile accident. Nevertheless, traces of radiation were found on some of the hikers' clothing by investigators. Some of them had odd burns on their bodies, and their skin had taken on an odd orange hue. Soviet authorities at the time were unable to come up with a rational explanation for what had transpired. The case was swiftly concluded with the ambiguous interpretation that the group's death was caused by a unknown compelling force. Numerous theories have been put forth over the years. Although there was no trace of an avalanche at the location, some people think that a quick avalanche pushed the group to escape in fear. Others argue that the hikers were paranoid due to infrasound, a phenomena caused by strong winds that is known to cause anxiety and bewilderment. The burns and radiation traces were even suspected to be caused by covert Soviet military trials involving radiation tests or parachute mines. Speculation that they had come across something alien was stoked by reports of brilliant orange orbs in the sky close to the time of their deaths. Unearthly. Despite numerous studies, no conclusive answers have ever been discovered. After reopening the case in 2020, Russian officials concluded that the deaths were caused by an avalanche. However, a lot of specialists are still not convinced, stating that the evidence just does not support that conclusion. The Dyatlov Pass Incident is still one of the most horrifying and puzzling mysteries in history. Over 60 years later, we may never know what really happened on that mountain. A young woman from Louisiana named Jacqueline Cade was the victim of a horrifying and inexplicable stalker in 1950. It started with a slow, creepy sound that seemed to float through the darkness as someone whistled ominously outside her window at night. She initially thought it was a joke, but each night the whistling got closer and closer. Then it got out of hand. Heavy breathing on the phone shortly followed the whistling, and then there came deep, guttural laughter. When Jackie's parents called the police, the whistling would cease each time an officer showed around. No one was apprehended, and no footprints were ever discovered. The more weeks passed, the more Jackie's fear grew. She appeared to be well known to her stalker. She heard the whistling behind her one evening as she was making her way home. There was nobody there when she turned around. The music followed her as she ran the remainder of the way home, never coming any closer or fading away. Her father also heard the whistling one night. With a shotgun in hand, he hurried outdoors to apprehend the person torturing his daughter. However, he searched the premises and discovered nothing. The police couldn't figure out how someone could move so fast and stay hidden. Then the most terrifying event of all occurred. "I'm coming for you," a distorted voice murmured to Jackie over the phone. Funeral flowers were delivered to her home the following day. Fearing about her safety, her parents arranged for her to stay with family. The whistling ceased as abruptly as it had started. Jackie never heard the phantom whistler again after getting married and moving away. Some others think it was a deranged stalker who took pleasure in frightening his victim. Some others think it was something otherworldly. Nobody is certain about the identity or nature of the phantom whistler to this day. Gloria Ramirez, a 31-year-old Riverside, California resident, was brought to Riverside General Hospital on February 19, 1994, due to severe symptoms associated with her advanced cervical cancer. However, what transpired in that ER became one of the most bizarre medical mysteries ever documented. Doctors and nurses detected something unsettling as soon as they started treating her. Her breath smelt of fruit and garlic. Her skin was oily, and when a nurse drew blood, the room smelled strongly of ammonia. Tiny white specks floating in the blood sample were even stranger. Then the nurse suddenly passed out. Other employees were ill one by one, suffering from nausea, lightheadedness, and even momentary paralysis. They evacuated the ER. Gloria was dead in 45 minutes despite the efforts of the doctors to save her. Ring contamination. Medical experts examined her body while wearing hazmat suits. Extensive testing failed to identify a clear cause. Some thought she had taken a home remedy that contained dimethyl sulfoxide, which might have turned into the poisonous gas dimethyl sulfate while she was in the hospital. This notion has never, however, been definitively validated. 5 of the 23 hospital employees who were unwell had to be admitted to the hospital. The case is still unresolved. Some suspect a supernatural incident, while others think it was an unidentified medical reaction.